Hello, and welcome to the Catching the Octopus podcast. Here, we will explore how connecting inward gives us an advantage outward. We openly talk about the obstacles and challenges and difficulties that life throws our way and how they become moments of gratitude and things that can benefit us when we look back on our lives. I'm your host, Naomi Hurley, and it is my mission to bring you top quality guests that will share with you openly their obstacles and also the techniques they use to go inward that strengthens the way that they serve themselves and others at the highest level. Thank you for joining. Let's get started. So welcome to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. Today we have Sean Picton as our guest. Now, Sean grew up in Liverpool in England, and from an early age, his dream was to become a police officer. So it was after a police officer visited his school. That's what kind of motivated him. So in 2008, he joined Merseyside Police as a civilian member. And in 2010, he fulfilled his dream of actually becoming a police officer. Over the next 6 years, Sean was deployed to several different departments, including response team policing and neighbourhood policing. And during this time, he and his team received commendations for their work in disrupting organised crime within the Fazakerley, you might have to correct me in a minute, Sean, Crossdeath and Norris Green areas. And in 2016, Sean achieved another long-term goal of policing abroad when he relocated to Gibraltar to continue his service in the Royal Gibraltar Police. So in 2018, Sean was promoted to sergeant and redeployed to a response team. And soon after, he was successful in his application to join the training and recruitment department. And he remained there until winter 2019, when he was redeployed back to the response teams. In July 2020, Sean was promoted once more, this time to inspector, and returned to the training and recruitment department. And during his time in this department, he and his team received commendations for their work in redeveloping the probation and management system. In July 2022, Sean was redeployed to become the response team inspector, where he remains today. And whilst conducting his duties as a serving police officer, Sean has since obtained certification as a professionally certified coach with the ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation. And he now runs his own business called The Hero Coach. So through The Hero Coach, Sean delivers leadership and life coaching services, as well as career coaching for police officers. And then also in early 2023, so earlier this year, Sean opened up his own podcast show called The Hero Help Desk. And on there, he discusses all things leadership, well-being, and police-related matters. So welcome, Sean. Welcome to Catching the Octopus.
No, thank you for having me.
No, it's just an absolute pleasure. And it's great to be able to use technology like this to connect with people all over the globe, right? When we're doing things like this.
Yeah, definitely. I think it connects a lot more people and a lot more professionals to have like discussions like what we're going to have today to just share lessons.
Yeah. And I mentioned to you just before we jumped on that you did a Leadership 30 with Jeff Stewart and the leaders, Southwest leaders. And I listened to that this morning. And it's just great to be able to get the insights and input from people everywhere. You know, we're not restricted to just our town anymore, which I think is just awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're not just restricted to our professions either. I think when I first started getting into the leadership elements of it, not like my own development, but starting to share lessons and reach out, I had a bit of feedback from people within different industries going, well, you're in the police, what can you teach me about, you know, my company, because I'm in sales, for example.
Yep.
But the reality of it is when it comes to leadership, we're all dealing with people, you know.
Yeah. And I think around, you know, my leadership and where I've come from, there's always been things that kind of may have been a little bit difficult in my life, but that actually gave me some insight into who I could become. And so I wanted to start out, I know your podcast talks about this as well, but how has the most difficult periods of life positively shaped your skills as a leader and your career progression?
You know, I would absolutely say it, and I say it in the first episode of me podcast, is when I had depression a couple of years back, because I was diagnosed with it in 2019, and I'd say on reflection now, I probably had it for most of 2018 through to the end of about 2020, and I would say over that time, it was without knowing it then, it was definitely the best thing that had ever happened to me, because I think what got me to that place, all of those sorts of behaviors and habits and everything that it got me there, it wasn't going to get me out of it. So I had to change, is the reality of it. And I had to make a conscious effort over an extensive period of time to change. And funnily enough, like I was saying on the Leadership 30 as well, is that actually the journey through that coincided with my first promotion that I'd ever had within the police. So whilst I'm trying to figure out who I am as a leader, I was figuring out who I am and who I wanted to be anyway in life. So I think as I was growing, and a big part of me getting out of depression actually was trying to add value to other people, and being promoted gave me the leadership platform to do so more than prior to promotion. So I think I threw myself into developing my skills, because the more I could give in my leadership position, the better I felt. Because, you know, to get to a place of depression, usually it's something because we've had some sort of crisis within life, opposed to a slow build up of things. There's usually a very clear trigger point or trigger point. And I think a lot of it sets in when our expectations don't match the reality of our current situation. And it's for us to make those changes. So once I started reconditioning my mind, my thoughts, and my belief system, then over time, consistently imprinting myself with those different beliefs, and then putting them into action in the new environment of carrying some sort of rank, and then having the opportunity to give back and use it as a platform to give back. Because my force is a very small force, but with that means we've got more emotional investment into the people that we work with, because we care about them, because we know them all, you know. And I think for me, being able to, whether it be in the training and recruitment and seeing somebody join the police and go through the early and more difficult time of the career, and trying to get them out of there and providing them with turning, you know, rough diamonds into polished diamonds, and then whether it be people on the teams that are maybe become a little bit disengaged or disenfranchised over the years, and then getting them back on the bus and getting them performing and getting them flying. And for me, there's a lot of spiritual fulfillment with that, and that come mainly, like, my driving factor is having felt what depression, you know, the impact mentally, and then later on physically, because, you know, it very is much of a case as within, so without. Everything's inside, sort of, you know, with toxicity, but over a period of time that manifests physically in your outside world. And
great.
like, my motivating factor is to make sure that where I can and where I can contribute, the people that I work with and that sort of come under my charge, and even those around me anyway in the workplace, I don't want them to go through that, because it's difficult, and it's not everybody will make it through that.
Yeah, it can be really, really tricky. And I think from what I do, so I'm very active in the leadership space, the workplace psychological space, and I also do one-to-one kind of therapies and coaching, a bit similar to you. And I find that it's the suffering that's actually the goal that pushes people to either create the change they need or get into a point where they're like, I can't deal with this anymore, and start having those thinking differently. So, you know, so I love what you're saying there. So you were in the recruitment area in that development space and having new people coming through. I mean, what would be advice that you would give new leaders, whether that's in the police force or in the general public?
Yeah, I mean and I said it in the Leadership 30, it's more of a mindset that you need to adopt opposed to just actions. I think that there's a saying that's really stuck with me over the last couple of years, and it's get comfortable being uncomfortable. If
Yeah.
you're new to leadership or you're new to the police, you're going to be thrown a complete different set of problems that comes with wearing a rank or getting, going up the chain. Because even something as simple as, and I'm not sure whether the corporate world has it too much, but certainly in the police, you'll do what's called, if I'm a constable, I'll do acting sergeant post. So when the sergeant's off, I'll wear the rank temporarily, and then when the sergeant comes back, I'll drop back down to my post. But being an acting sort of gives them a bit of safety net that if they
Mm.
do mess up, go, well, I'm still learning. I'm not fully yet in rank. Whereas once you get promoted, especially in a small force like mine, where the chances are you're going to go back to working very closely with the people you were working with, and now you're responsible for them.
Yep.
There's a very different sort of pressure that if anything you put on yourself, it can be a little bit of imposter syndrome at times. And I think getting comfortable being uncomfortable also translates into stepping repeatedly into your comfort zone.
Mm.
Sorry, outside your comfort zone. A lot of us, we're all motivated by something, and you see it in people that are motivated heavily by the need for certainty. And those people will stick to their safe spaces. So like
Mm.
in a policing capacity, somebody might just stick to just doing traffic because they like traffic, they know traffic, and they don't want to venture into other disciplines of policing. And it's the same in leadership. And the only way to sort of grow that comfort zone is to just keep inch by inch stepping out of it repeatedly. And it
Mm.
doesn't need to be anything dramatic, because if you're practicing leadership over the next 20 years, if you get promoted first time around and you start practicing leadership for the next 15, 20, 30 years, then if you just make those incremental steps over a period of time, then you'll become familiar in the territory just outside of your comfort zone. And in the end, that familiarity makes you more comfortable, more certain when you're
Mm.
operating within that sort of space just beyond the boundaries of your comfort zone. And in the end, it becomes part of your comfort zone. And imagine that over a 20-year period of just slowly growing that competency level. Like after 20 years, your skill set's going to be phenomenal.
Mm. Yeah, I just had this vision while you were saying that of, like the couch grass, if your borders aren't really strong and they just slowly come in, and if you leave them too long
Yeah,
and you don't stop it, they take over the garden, right? So
yeah.
it's kind of like that, isn't it? Just and little 1%ers slowly add
Yeah.
up when it's compounding. So yeah, like you say, it doesn't have to be big jumps, does it? It can just be little steps that you take and just keep pushing yourself.
Yeah, no, and there will be opportunities at times to take those bigger leaps, but if you just operate in extremes and you operate and take a big leap every time you step out of your comfort zone, then with that comes bigger risk as well. So
Yeah.
some people, if they make that mistake, it might put them off and they might never leap again, and then they'll just stay in that comfort zone. So that's and look, when you're new to leadership as well, you're going to make mistakes, and
Yeah.
your organization not promoted you because you've demonstrated absolute mastery in that at that level. They've promoted you because you've shown a level of competency with the potential for growth.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. And I've been delivering this week some workshops on workplace psychological safety. And we've kind of said, what does that look like to me? And one of the things I said is making a mistake and not having it thrown back in my face every day for the rest of my life, right? Because we're human and we all make mistakes. But by
Yeah.
doing that, that also holds you back from your comfort zone too, doesn't it? Like that fear of, I'm going to be rejected and people are always going to be criticizing. You need to have that safe space, don't you, to be able to step out of that comfort zone.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think loads of people that conscientiously work on themselves in many different areas. So, and certainly I can say I learned the best from this, but I seen something on, I think it was LinkedIn the other day, and it was just a graphic, and it was saying it showed books stacked, like the level of learning people get from theory was like this much, and then bit more for doing, and then up there for mistakes. And I really do resonate with that. I think I've probably made so many mistakes, but it's the opportunity to, and the willingness to not beat yourself up over it, and class it as learning, an opportunity to learn. And I don't even just mean leadership, I mean life in general. And again, it's a mindset for me that got me out of depression. Is okay, this has happened, this is bad, what can I learn from it? And then the key after that is, how can I apply the learning to next time around?
Yeah. And, you know, as toddlers, we don't fall over once and go, that's it, I can't do this. You know, we could just keep trying, right? Because we haven't been programmed to think, oh, failing's bad. We've been programmed to think, oh, yeah, what have we learned from it? So I love that was a place that you got to, and a big takeaway for you from that space. And so why do you think it's important to practice the art of leadership daily? And kind of how does this impact in other areas of your life?
I think, one, it's important because if we stay still, we get left behind. I think it's very simple. I think society's always changing, and with that comes different challenges. So, like, I've heard a lot over the years of maybe the dinosaurs of the leadership world that are very sort of anti millennials.
Yep.
And it's very much like, you know, these people are not the same. No, they're not.
No.
They're not. They never claim to be. So,
no.
And loads of organisations, the police is the same. If you see on LinkedIn, the police in general all do like diversity related recruitment, and rightly so. But a lot of the organisations that I've seen, and certainly in discussions with colleagues across the world, is what we tend to do is we recruit different people, and then we all expect them to be the same.
Be the same, yeah. Yeah.
And I think we sort of try and, without knowing it, force this culture onto people, opposed to recognizing that with diverse people comes an evolution of culture.
Yeah.
And I think that comes an evolution of leaders. And I think it comes back to the comfort zones again, is if you've got leaders there that are not willing, because maybe through fear, to adapt and stay relevant to the people that you're leading. You know, like we were saying about millennials, if the responsibility is on the leader to adapt, because that's one or two people managing a group of people. And that's the art of leadership. The art of leadership is to grow your influence, and as a team achieve goals. But if you're operating from a completely different lens, and you're very much detached from that team, then it's going to be very difficult to motivate people, because as society changes, the wants and the needs change as well. You know, back so many years ago, all people seemed to want was a steady job, a pension, and a house. And now there's all these other things that are coming in where people want to add value, make a difference, like almost like non-tangible entities and perceptions. And it's for the leader to have good conversations with the team on an individual basis, and go, what is it you want, and how can we facilitate that for you? I think organizations as well are still very much, even though the market's heavily competitive, the organization is quite rigid when it comes to recruitment. It's like, why should we have you, opposed to the individual go, why should I join you?
Yeah.
You know, and I think if an organization adopts that, and you can, I mean, try it sometime, honestly, whoever your leader is at top level, ask them, if I'm a recruit, why should I join yourselves? Because it's all changed. It's all changed, because the pension, say in the police, the pension in the UK the pension now is different to what it was. So that sort of comfort zone based argument, like not challenging the reality of where we are now, and still adopting principles and viewpoints from 30 or 40 years ago, they're less relevant now because the pension has changed and people's wants and needs have changed. The housing market's got, it's just changed dramatically. So people want different things. And I think, it's for us, the leaders, to engage with the workforce and practice, because as well, if you're practicing every day, it's like what I was saying there, you should be expanding your comfort zone opposed to operating within that comfort zone all the time, every day, because you could be a leader of 20 years and not try and expand that skill set. And then you're just good at those things that you were good at in year 3 of leadership. So, I think you've got to practice, because even the workplace changes in the last 20 years. Technology's impacted on workplace processes. So if you're not, just something as simple as if you're a manager of an admin-based system that used to be paper, and now somebody higher up has brought it all digital. If you're not making the effort to grow and get comfortable being uncomfortable within a digital landscape, then you're going to time out and you'll be less relevant, and that will affect your performance, your team's performance, and then maybe they get somebody else to fill that post.
And when you're saying that, I go back to a conversation I had the other week. Actually, we were talking about I sit on one of the local school boards, and we're talking about the students and how they're not like they were in our day. That was a conversation around the table, and I kind of let everyone speak for a while, and then I went, you know what, they're not. So our parents could have sat around the table and said, we weren't like they were in their day. And then their parents could have done the same. And what we need to look at is, so how do we actually give them what they need? Instead of just picking out all the differences, let's use that then to motivate us to go, well, this can help drive them forward and motivate them and give them what they're looking for and what they need.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think a lot of the time when we say, these people are not like the way we used to be, it's because we're projecting ourselves on them at that time. And if you go even further back, of course, it's going to be very different, because so far back, there was wars that was affecting all of Europe and America, and all these different countries. That's going to have an impact. And then you've got recessions and heavy levels of post-war poverty and those sorts of things that are going to impact. But so as the world's becoming more safe, and it's changing, and technology is growing, and people are more on the phones. If I'm sure there's somebody else saying we're not the same as what people were 30 years ago, because we're doing this right now online, opposed to having a face-to-face or writing a letter or on the phone. And that's the nature of it. I think if you try and impose patterns of the past, it's not conducive to innovation. And I think the same can be said for leadership as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that goes back to that mindset that you said way straight up, wasn't it? It's about having that right mindset on it and being open to that change, stepping out of the comfort zone. So it kind of goes full circle, doesn't it? It goes right back to that space.
And I'd rather take responsibility for my development and me changing and trying to create a space within an ever-changing environment than being so timed out that I get forced into a different position. So I'm in control of my professional destiny. If I keep skilled up, going back to the transferring from a paper-based system into digital, for want of a better metaphor or example, is if I'm not consciously skilling up in those areas to make that transition, then I'm just leaving myself exposed to somebody higher up going, well, actually, you're not going to be there anymore. I'm going to choose now where you're going to be. And you end up your destiny in the hands of other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And what was it you said in the Leadership 30? I think it was you got to be the hero of your own destiny. Was that what you said?
You've got to participate in your own rescue.
That's it. Yeah, participate in your own rescue. Exactly.
And that's so relevant to everything, whether that be so a new leader that doesn't know a lot of stuff because they'll know some stuff, but they've not achieved leadership mastery at that level. They've shown a level of potential and skill that the organization has gone, we'll promote you. So from that point on, if you're engaged in developing as a leader and you're truly engaged in that process, you've got to reach out again, take the steps yourself. People can help you. That's fine. They can give you all the resources, external resources, training, mentors, and all of that. But you have to engage. You've got to participate in your own rescue. You've got to go out there, be proactive, seek out that learning, and then be brave enough to try and apply the learnings. And it's the same, like I was saying about depression on my podcast, and I think I mentioned that on the Leadership 30 as well. Is it's nobody was going to get me out of that. That's down to me, and I know now that life's going to chuck a load of stuff at me that maybe I can't, I can't change that. That's going to happen to me. But what I can change is me response to it, and all that comes from just practicing those beliefs I was saying before. What learnings am I getting from this? How can maybe I avoid it next time? Or if it does happen again, how can I make myself more resilient and be able to operate more within that sort of chaos? Because life is chaos, and leadership definitely can be as well. And I think once you sort of build up that resilience and that get your body used to being flooded with adrenaline, with stress, hopefully good stresses, but your body can get used to processing it, so it doesn't disrupt your thinking patterns as much. Whereas if you're not throwing yourself into discomfort and you're not adopting the mindset of I'm in charge of what happens to me and participating in your own rescue, then when you face those other tests, it's like you're facing them again, like for the first time over, and you repeat the cycle. And I do truly believe that life throws a lesson at you and keeps throwing it at you until you've learned the lesson. Just like a very basic Sega Mega game, you just try and say Sonic or just try and get over that jump. Oh, failed. Try again. Get over that, and in the end, you get past it and you can move through to the next level. And I think we have to make a conscious effort to level up. And sometimes that will be in very difficult times. It's easy to be motivated when things are going well, but where's your inner fire? What's your motivation? What's your why? And that bigger picture, when things start getting on top, things start getting very pressurized, and a lot of that is just having that mindset of participating in your own rescue, step outside your comfort zone and constantly seek new ways to learn and then apply it.
If you're enjoying this podcast and you want Naomi or any of her guests featured on your podcast or as a keynote speaker at your next event, you'll find their contact details included in the show notes. If you'd like to learn more about how you can work with Naomi individually or as part of your strategy to improve leadership in your business, then review the courses, offers and services at getupandgroconsulting.com.au.
Yeah, and it was like, coming out of that comfort zone, like you said before, become familiar with the unfamiliar, right? That's what's going to help you build that resilience as well. So what was the biggest obstacle that you've had to overcome, do you think? And how did that strengthen your connection inward?
What my biggest obstacle in life?
Yeah.
I would say it was clearly the depression, but not necessarily just because it was depression. It was just a lot of things in life that, so like I had this dream, like this picture, this vision for the future. And like I said on the Leadership 30, that changed when my relationship broke down. And to sort of paint a picture, like you said at the start, I'd moved to Gibraltar from England. So other than me 2 kids and my ex-partner, we didn't really have any sort of family here. So it was very much like being out at sea all of a sudden, just on looking for some sort of driftwood to hold on to. And it was about trying to get back onto solid ground. And that started with trying to find out who I was, or certainly who I wanted to be. I needed to not only recondition my mind, as I said, but look back and explore the patterns that that got me to that place as well in different areas of life. And I don't know whether you're familiar with this, but if you Google the Wheel of Life, there's a good little assessment tool there. It's basic but brilliant in just in its own simplicity. And there's various titles that you can put on there. But for those that haven't seen it, it's basically a circle in its section, just like almost like pizza slices into different things. And it can be fitness, finances, your relationships with friends, relationship with your spouse, and it's a wheel of different titles, and you score each area, each section out of 10. And for me, doing that was just a good starting point of going, where am I unhappy now? And like, if you're in full depression, many of those scores are going to be low. But it's about trying to, for me, it was going, okay, if I work on this one, this area, it'll impact on these other two areas. So I started doing that. But a big thing for me that, and I do to this day, but just less regularly, is reflective practice. So what I've got in my cupboard is basically years of A4 pieces of paper of me writing out my challenges at this particular time, my thoughts, my feelings, my actions, and then sort of, and at the start in depression, it was all negative. It was when I read it back, it's like somebody else has written it, and I can read, like, not just but the fire and the anger in it. And it clearly, if I would say, I can tell me blood was probably like lava at the time of writing some of the stuff there. And it was just then, to me, as I'm reconditioning myself, I started writing it differently. I'd always finish then on, okay, well, finish on a positive at least, something very basic. So it could just be something like, I had a really good day at the water park with my kids, or whatever, something like that. And what I notice now is even the words on the page, they're almost like, they're clearly less emotional. They're very much logical, almost like task-based, and almost like, well, I'm writing it's almost like third person, because the emotions are taken out of the paper. And now I'll do that on like a monthly, two monthly basis. But I know that when I'm struggling, that's what I revert back to, is doing maybe, I mean, at the start of depression, I was doing it daily, just so I could work out what my common thoughts and feelings were on a day-to-day basis. Because some days I'd be flat, and then others I'd be really low, and then others right up, and it was a bit like a zigzag. But now, whenever I'm having a bit of stress or anxiety, I'll do it like once a week or twice a week, just to talk through or write through my problems. And the way I've described this, and even talking about the problems, I think it's a form of how your mind can excrete waste product.
Yeah.
And I think it's so impactful. If our body's got different mechanisms for getting rid of waste, and if you keep it inside, it becomes toxic. And I think it's the same for that. So, like, for me, just writing my way through, or talking, and that could be on a drive somewhere when I drop the kids off and drive back. I still do it now. I just talk to myself. But some people might want to talk to their God or whatever. Maybe that's part of a bit of sort of prayer operating there as well, or law of attraction based stuff. But I think for me, it's just very powerful just to make sure that you get that out. And there'd be many times I'd look on paper, or I'd listen to myself speak, and I'd go, "You're talking crap." That's you're still onto something from that is no longer relevant. It's like what I was saying before about, like, holding on to those old sort of patterns and beliefs in an organization. You're doing it in your own life. You can tell yourself a disempowering story about why you can't do something. But when you actually analyze it, you go, I can do it. So a prime example of that was when I'd moved from Gibraltar then to Spain, and then my relationship broke down. And after about 3 years, because Spain is much less expensive to live for rent than it was in Gibraltar, and to live on my own as a constable, I would struggle to live in Gib. And I always told myself, can't afford to live in Jib, it's too expensive. And then 3-4 years on, I've been promoted twice, but I was still telling myself, oh yeah, I can't live in Jib, even though it would have been socially better for me. And then I remember I was on the phone trying to sort out a car, and the lady on the other end goes, "Do you live in Gibraltar?" I said, "No, I don't." And she went, "Well, why don't you just live in Gibraltar?" And at that point, I remember thinking, "Oh yeah, I can," because I've been promoted twice, and financially, there's benefits to that. And then within, I think, 4 or 5 months, I've moved back, and then I've seen just the quality of life jump up, because if we're in an environment that and we're having certain thoughts and feelings, and we keep going back to that environment, we'll likely keep having the same thoughts and feelings. So for me, when I moved again, it was a change of environment, which surrounded me with different things, different places, different things, different people, and again, which caused a difference in my thought pattern, and that's been majorly helpful as well. So even from a leadership standpoint, what I would say is, if don't just, and it ties in with your comfort zone as well, don't just stick to one area within your sort of profession. If you can get experience in new environments, new places, it'll open up how you think, how you perceive challenges, how you interact with people, because you're going to come into contact with different people. You know, if you work in gaming, which is massive in Gibraltar, and you're working in the marketing element, and then you get moved to something that is tech-based, well, although you're managing people, the two very different types of people that will go into marketing, advertising, than tech-based stuff. So then you're going to learn maybe how to go from managing more extroverted people to then a team of introverted people as well. So I think there's definite value in just in life and in leadership, just seeking out that, like, chase after discomfort, because you'll grow your set that way.
I love that. And the work I do is about the mind, the emotions, and the body, and how closely they are connected. And we don't always have that realization of that. But, when you were saying about those power of the thoughts and not getting them out, and how they can have a detrimental effect, ulcers, right? We all say that ulcers are caused by stress, and stress are just thoughts, right? That's what stress is caused by. So, we already know that thoughts can actually manifest as serious illness in the body. And if we're not processing them, getting them in the right space, or, like you said, sending them to waste, then it's just going to have a snowball effect in everything else, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I said it at the start of the Leadership 30, it is, if our passion, our drive, our why is like the petrol or the fuel in the engine, I genuinely think the mindset and well-being of us is like the oil that sort of keeps everything running nice and smooth. And the engine and the fire the engine can only run as smooth as the oil that's going in. And I think, we can all be fired up, but is it good fire? Is it bad fire? Is it anger, revenge, regret? Operating from that place, or are we operating from a place of growth, contribution, stepping beyond our comfort zones? And if we've got that mindset and that mental oil that keeps this operating, good quality oil is going to keep the engine going for much longer than poor quality. And I think your life is only as good as your thoughts, because your thoughts impact on what you feel.
Yeah, 100%. So when we're talking about, how we feel and life is sending us challenges, like you said, it's always doing that. Would you have a key challenge in your life that you could think of that you ended up having gratitude for? Because kind of what I believe is, even our biggest obstacles end up being unwrapped gifts. Whether we unwrap them today or 10 years from now, we can see some gold nuggets in it. But, what's a key challenge that you're now grateful for, and how did that end up benefiting you?
I would say early on in my policing career, experiencing poor leadership. Poor leadership. Purely because within my remit, poor leadership can get you hurt as well. So it's extremely severe as to the impact of it, but it can also have a detrimental effect on the wider public as well, not just me as an individual and not just me and, you know, my colleagues that we're working with. And I think those lessons combined with the other biggest learning, which was the depression and that, but those learnings, I think, have proved to be so valuable, because it's like there's a saying that I come across of making your pain your power. And I think if you almost utilize, I say negative, but that's just the word that we attach to it. But you know,
unhelpful,
unhelpful events, but they actually turn out to be extremely helpful, because then you can cherry pick what you don't want to use and what you make sure definitely doesn't end up in your team when you end up as a leader itself. Like when new people join the police, I say to them, cherry pick the good qualities that you want and take those bits, and then the other bits just put to one side, because they might not be congruent with your personality and your policing style. And I think the reverse of that for me was from working with a couple of poor leaders early on in my career. I'm more conscious, and I'm sure they've had good qualities, but the bad qualities were that bad, they just imprinted on me. And I think for the better, because now when I'm in my positions, that I'm very conscious of those failings that I certainly don't want to bring into my leadership style. And I'm sure that without me knowing it, there's one or two people watching me going, I actually wouldn't do that. So when I get promoted, I'm not going to take that. Do you know what I mean? And because again, I'm always learning as well, so I'm going to make mistakes. But the difference is, I think, is when you do make those mistakes, if you make it once or twice, that's fine, because you're learning. But if you're adopting something that is a practice that is harmful to your team, then that's part of your leadership style, and you're using it as a tool within your toolkit as a means of you know, leading your teams. So I think that really, and I think on top of that as well with the depression, I think what that allowed me to do is just become massively more empathetic for people, and recognize that while somebody's, so I mean, you see people can go through depression, high level stress, high level anxiety for a number of reasons, and it doesn't have to be anything majorly severe in my eyes. It could just be something that over time has stacked up, and then there's been a tipping point and everything's just collapsed. You know, I'm sure there's people listening to me going, okay, but you know, why would you have depression? Nobody's died on you. Just like when you get footballers, you know, sports people that get depression, and you always get those comments of, why are they depressed? You know, they've got tons of money. It's like, well, you don't know what's going on. You don't know what's going on in their personal lives, you know. But depression's just a severe state of spiritual harm or deterioration. And I think at that point, and I do think it's life saying, you need to change. Like this is me giving you that route. You need to change. It's pain is a good accelerant for growth, and I think it's Tony Robbins that says there's two reasons people make massive change, and one of the reasons is the benefits are so clear and quick that people just go, boom, I'm going to take that course of action. And the other one is usually when they've had enough of whatever suffering they're going through. And that can be really powerful, because I'm sure on a neurological level, because I'm qualified in NLP as well, neuro-linguistic programming, that's going to have an impact on you and your patterns and your habits. And it's those habits over an extended time that determine how your life changes. So I think those two things, the poor leadership and the depression, have definitely two of my biggest takeaways, which is what I can put into my leadership sort of toolkit, but also our lead myself as well, because what I have come to recognize is leadership is much easier if you live how you lead and you lead how you live. So you're not two different people. You're operating from an
authentic space.
Purely authentic, because that way people people are getting whether you're, off duty or on duty, they're getting a continuity of character, a continuity of decision making processes, and a continuity of that person's ethics. And look, they might not like them, they might not agree with certain things, but at least you get that standardized service in work and outside of work. And from my point of view, if I'm making a decision and it's based on my own personal values, then it's easier for me. If somebody asks me, why did you do that? It's just so much easier for me to rationalize it than if I was to go, oh, well, I've seen this person do this before. Yeah, okay, but you don't know why they done it. Because, every circumstance is different. If I'm faced with one problem, I could deal with it in different ways, but I feel better and I feel I give the sort of best value for the team if I operate from my space, because I'll have explored the ins and outs of it as in the decision making process, and I always try and operate from a place of contribution and adding value. That question of how does this add value, or how can I add value, is very much at the forefront of when I try and instigate some sort of change or make a major decision, or try and help somebody maybe that's in a bit of a welfare rut. And I think so long as you're operating from that space, whilst you might miss things or make mistakes, they're genuine. And I think even the individual on the receiving end can process that, so long as once you receive that feedback, you're open to maybe adapting and tweaking it here and there to achieve whatever the desired outcome is.
Yeah. And I think the beauty of that as well is, people aren't always going to like you. They're not always going to like your character or your values or anything like that. But when you're consistent with them, they at least trust you. And I think as a leader, it's not about being liked, but it is about people trusting you and knowing what to expect from you, right? Because then you can bring out the best in them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, over the years I've gone into work, and you can tell, you can tell, like, for some leaders or managers, the way they operate doesn't seem to be consistent based on whatever they're going through at that particular time. And I think that can be the case with new leaders, especially when they're trying to figure out who they are, because one of the faults and it's a lot of the time made with good intentions, but they can get sort of stuck in that rut, is when they try and model somebody, and whoever they're trying to model doesn't correlate with their own sort of personal values or even behavior. So a simple thing, I've seen an introverted manager who's newly promoted trying to model somebody that is extroverted, and it just doesn't come across as genuine, because it's not them. It doesn't come across as authentic. And then that introvert, this person's now an introvert when he's got stuff on his shoulder. He's extroverted when he's got stuff on his shoulder. He's introverted when his shift finishes. And it's bizarre, and you can sort of tell, and certainly the team members can tell when they're not getting a genuine version of that leader. And like I said, it could be a new leader, so you can maybe they're just making their mistakes. But when it's somebody that is been there for an extensive period of time, or even worse, when you do get one of those managers that's been there for an extensive period of time, and then their boss shows up and they start displaying all these other behaviors, that's how you can lose massive credibility. And once you lose credibility, it's very difficult to get that back, because they simply don't trust you.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that's probably one of the key elements that we forget as a leader, that trust is just so important, and it's how we show up, right? On whether we get the trust. Now, one of the questions that I ask everyone is sort of what daily, weekly, or monthly practices, wherever you go, do you do that strengthens your connection with your inner self? So that's where our authenticity comes from. I'll spit it out. That's where we're actually, when we connect with ourselves, we're coming from that place of higher emotional intelligence and all those sorts of things. Do you have any practices that you do on a regular basis?
Yeah, I think I'd alluded to one of them earlier, which is the reflective practice, both on paper and verbally as well, just to sort of excrete the toxicity and put the way I think of it, it's like a filing cabinet of thoughts. It's just putting everything in order for me, so that I'm a creature that likes some sort of structure and a bit of logic. So for me, that helps massively in just sort of de-stressing, knowing that things are in the right way, and that's me maybe trying to meet that need for certainty as well. But then what I would say is going out on hikes. So I'm lucky, like where I live, I can drive down the coast and there's different trails and the weather's always really good. So like I'll go on different hikes where it's like a 4-hour hike. I'll take a backpack. Sometimes I'll take the kids, other times I absolutely won't, and I'll just go on my own.
Nice.
Just go and walk to the top of a mountain, or go and swim in the sea. And I remember like thinking it earlier on, like when I was really struggling, I looked out the window and we have sort of like flash periods of bad weather, and it was just raining like so much. And I thought, I'm not going to go out. And then I thought, but if that wind and rain is just like, pushing me back, I'm going to be focused on that, opposed to focusing on whatever's swimming around in here. So I went out and I got absolutely drenched, and it was so windy. I was getting pushed about left, right, and centre. But what I'd done that for half an hour, just struggled in the elements, and then when I come back in, soaked, I'd realised I'd not been thinking about my problem for like 30 minutes. Yeah, it was just a breath of fresh air. And like what I do now for that is I go swimming in the sea, and there's like a little cove area, and I'll take a buoyancy aid so I'm safe and that I'm not taking any stupid risks. But like I'm so terrified about what's under the sea, especially things like the aliens like octopus and that. Like I've just got this fear of things grabbing me. So like while I'm swimming, I'm just thinking, don't look under that water, and then I'll get hit by a big wave, and that'll like put me to go, I need to sort myself out here in the water and make sure I'm swimming on track. And that just keeps me present in that moment, opposed to thinking too much in the future and too much in the past. So I sort of, it's not like shock-based therapy, it's just heavy distraction techniques for maybe 30 minutes, not escapism based stuff like drinking because that's got the impact later on as well. But even if it's something like gaming, a lot of people find a lot of solace in gaming, healthy level of it. Don't escape and do 12 hours a day or 10 hours a day, but just a bit, just to escape this world for a bit. Go into another one. And I think now that's much easier to do with the quality of the games and the graphics and that now, or even books. But I do a mix of all of that really, and I think also I'm because of my job and because what motivates me, I do give a lot of my time and energy out to people, but sometimes I just lock myself in the house and have a day of just doing nothing as well. And I think sorry,
what's your favorite game?
I would say, well, what I'm really excited for, I think it comes out, might be today actually, is Final Fantasy 16. Okay. So I'm looking forward to that, or even some football manager games as well. Just change it up, because it's changing things up and getting that variety that in different, it could be in books or in films. I took a lot of flack yesterday because I said I like the American version of The Office. That wasn't well received, but I love that because it's such a simple level of humour that I can turn it on, and the episodes are like 20 minutes. It's not a big commitment. And I can just put one on, maybe two on, and then just laugh at something that is absolutely stupid. And coming back to the working my way through depression, I started watching heavily a lot of comedies just so I could laugh, and I found that as well to be an escapism a lot of the time, especially when you're career driven as well. You can spend a lot of time just on the next goal, and then when you get this goal, you're focused on the next goal, and you don't take the time just to stay still sometimes. And I think just act of trying to stay still. Some people get through meditation. I don't. For me, the closest I can compare the impact of meditation to would be, for me, if I go like fitness, doing a bit of fitness. Now, it doesn't have to be anything extreme. Again, people operate in extremes. We either have the diet and the exercise on point, or we don't do it at all.
Yeah.
And like for me, it's very much a case of going, I'm just going to go on this walk because I've been sat in because I was off from work for a bit. I'm just going to go out and go for a walk in the sun and the elements and just do it slow. Just look around, and then by the end of it, that was my like mini win. Like if I was like, what does winning look like to me? And it was, okay, do a bit of fitness.
Get out of the house,
and it's get out the house, get moving, change up your environment, because your house can become very claustrophobic, especially in the area where I live, where it's all apartments and studios and that. So like I live in a studio now, so it's very important that I do get out. And like now I can walk out and I'm right in the middle of the hustle and bustle of everything. Whereas in Spain it was different. He was away from everything. So like I can get as much social interaction, because a big part of my depression was feeling lonely and isolated. And now like sometimes I want to be lonely. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's so much around me that I'm gonna go.
I know exactly what you mean.
And I've got used to massively of just my own space, my own time. And if anybody's going to come into that space, it's because I've invited them, opposed to anything else, like it being invaded. So like where I live now, this is my retreat, and I can go out the door and get as much socializing as I want. Or I might have just a couple of days of just locking myself away. You know, sorting the house out, getting on the computer game, just or doing stuff like this. Do you know what I mean? Working on my own stuff, like my business and that. So it's good. I think it's very helpful. And there's a multitude of things. You just don't have to do everything in extremes. And I think it's like what I was saying, in the same breath of stepping slightly outside your comfort zone, little by little. Well, when it comes to looking after yourself, just change up your little practices little by little. And every day it only has to be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, because if you do 10 or 15 minutes a day for 7 days, that's more than just going, I couldn't do 1 hour's worth on the Monday, so that's it, I'll start next Monday. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So how then, if people wanted to get a hold of you, how are they going to do that? So you've got the podcast, you've got your business, and you've got your profiles on socials and stuff. Quickly give us a rundown on those, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, which is the main sort of operating platform for me. So if you type in Sean Picton or the Hero Coach, that'll come up. And then what I've done through that is like the sort of central hub for my website. So theherocoach.org, and on that website I've got a bit about me, about the coach, you know, my background, skill sets and professional experience, and then the services I provide. But then also, if through LinkedIn as well, and through Instagram, especially on Instagram, actually, there's you know, the link tree.
Yes.
If you've seen that space.
Yep.
It shows out everything that you've got there, but through that and through social media, through LinkedIn, it's got the access to my podcast and the different episodes. So what you'll see on LinkedIn in particular is, if I've gone on one of my hikes or gone for a swim, I'll post something about that, and then I'll explain the benefits of why I'm doing it, and I'll link it to either that particular episode or you know, the actual podcast itself. So there's different platforms. We've got a YouTube as well, but that's very much in its infancy at the moment. That's at the moment what I've been putting on is the audio files of the podcasts as well. So whatever's on my podcast, which I do through buzzsprout.com, but it's on the other platform, Audible, Spotify.
Well, I've found it on Spotify. So it is on there.
And so all of those have been transferred onto YouTube. But what I do want to do is get more videos out there. It's just at the moment, what I'm practicing is the mastery of podcast. And next year, I think I'll go into the video elements of it. Don't want to do too much too soon. And it's just learning to edit and the time that takes.
Is the time, isn't it? You know, I even with this podcast, I got all these great ideas, and I was just like, you know what, you just need to launch it. Right. I could have been working on this for years, and I'm sure you'd be the same. Like with your podcast, it's like, oh, and when I listen, I twitch a little bit, but I'm like, it's okay. It's there. It's better than not being there at all, right?
No, exactly. And like, you know, especially with the stuff I'm trying to push your flaws, your let's say moments of weakness and adversity are fine. So, you know, so long as you learn from them. And I think like, I listen back to some of the areas, and I'm like, yeah, I maybe said it like that, or maybe the edit a little bit off, or whatever. But again, I'm learning. So and realistically, people who are listening know that as well. If you're releasing your first podcast, it's not because you've mastered, you know, the art of creating a podcast. That's part of it. And there's really good like YouTube channels, and I think there's one called Think Media, and he talks about, and there's another one, a fitness-based one, and they always go back and laugh because they look at the very first YouTube videos when like the picture wasn't that good, but when they're very sort of scripted and rigid, where they're clearly reading off a script up there, and it wasn't free flowing, and you see it now, and it's just part of the process, and it's part of the transformation, and going through that again, like. For me, I ended up building my own website as well. So like anyone that goes on the website, I've just YouTube my way through trying to build a website. So I've got that skill now, and I appreciate if in the future I ask somebody, can you build me a website? I know the effort that goes into it, and can appreciate it when they send me the bill. You know, so there's multiple things. It's all like it's a new environment, and I'm just learning that environment. And sometimes you have to go through the obstacles, because for years I was skilling up. Like this for me was like 2-3 years in the making, and I was skilling up doing courses and stuff, and then it was always like, yeah, but when I get to this, then I'll have to do this and do this, and then I might open it. Early on in the year, once I built my website, that was it. It was like all the excuses, all
they're all gone. I can't find any more.
I'd worked through them all, and it was very much like, oof.
Got to do
it now. So I started doing it, and that's why, like, for me, the podcast as well. Like when I say about talking through things, the podcast for me, recording it is cathartic as well, and is a nice release. I've seen it's been well received. It's certainly a lot more so than I would have thought, bearing in mind, you know, I'm starting out. So that's really good, and I've had good feedback. And look, not everybody's going to like you, and there'll be people there that will be like, who's he think he is, like sharing this, and like, okay, that's fine, but if ever you do need it, it's there, is what I will say to those people. Because life can rugby tackle you tomorrow, and everything changes.
Yeah. So if you want to get a hold of Sean, if you want to listen to him, actually jump on the Hero Desk, the podcast, have a look for that, or jump on LinkedIn and look him up and connect. And I'm sure he'll be happy to connect with you and have a bit of a chat. But thank you very much, Sean, for jumping on. It's been a pleasure having you. Thanks for joining in and listening to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. It's been great having you here. And if you'd like to go and like and subscribe, and maybe even leave a 5-star rating if you think it's worth it, I'd really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.